Welcome to Wiregrass Daily News Sports. This is your daily look at sports in the Wiregrass and the Southeast. Dothan Wolves on 96.9, the legend producer Phillip Jordan breaks the news, covers the games, and talks to experts in the Wiregrass and Southeast. And now, Phillip Jordan.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Friday edition, fantastic Friday edition of Wiregrass Daily News Sports. So you know what's going to be going down today. I ain't going to be joined by Matt Lowe in just a few moments from Philadelphia Media, and we're going to go over all the big college football games for Saturday. We will discuss Auburn playing LSU, Alabama playing Arkansas, Troy playing Army, Florida State playing Syracuse, but also most of the SEC games. We left out Georgia Vanderbilt. Didn't feel the need picking that one. We know where that one's going. We will go nationally with some picks too as well. We will be picking Oregon, Washington, USC, Notre Dame, and we'll also be talking about North Carolina, Miami. So a lot of cool stuff to go through there with Matt on today's show. But for jumping in that with Matt, I'm going to go over the high school football schedule for tonight. A bunch of interesting games going on in the Wiregrass. First up, 7A Region 2. Of course, you'll be able to listen to this game over on 96.9 The Legend with pregame starting at 6:45. Dothan will be traveling to take on Enterprise. Dothan's been on a long road trip. They go into their off week next week, and they'll be on the road the following week at Opelika. But a little bit closer, so Dothan have a lot more of the home fans in attendance when they travel, like I said, to play at Enterprise in a big rivalry game, big 7A Region 2 game. Now we're kind of looking at stuff from playoff implications and stuff like that. In 5A Region 2, Carroll will be at Headland. That should be a fun one, a good quarterback battle in that one. Eufaula at Charles Henderson. Charles Henderson trying to rebound from an upset defeat against Rehoboth last week. Eufaula's coming off that thrilling victory over Rehoboth. Over Carroll last week. Rehoboth at 3-3 will be at Greenville, who's 1-5. 4A Region 2, Andalusia 7-0 will be at 1-5 Slocum. 2-5 Geneva will be at 2-5 Dale County. Daleville 2-5 will be at Opp tonight. That should be a interesting and a good one. Pike County at 3-3 will be at 4-2 Providence Christian. 5-1 Strawn at 1-5 New Brockton. And then 2-4 Northside Methodist at 5-1 Houston Academy. I would say probably the best matchup there would be Pike County and Providence Christian in that matchup. Then in 2A Region 2, Ayrton will be at Abbeville. Ayrton 3-4, Abbeville 1-6. This is the matchup, the big matchup in 2A Region 2. Really could decide things down the road for who wins this region. 5-0 Cottonwood will be at 5-0 GW Long, but GW Long's loss was in. I got tongue-tied there. It's early in the morning, guys. GW Long 5-1, and their one loss is out of region, so they're undefeated in region play, just like Cottonwood. Zion Chapel will be at Geneva County, and then 1-5 Sampson will be at 3-3 Wicksburg. 2A Region 3, Barber County 1-5 will be at 7-0 Highland Home, and then 5-2 Goshen will be at 6-1 Laverne. That should be an interesting matchup in 2A Region 3. And then in 1A Region 2, Farrell will be at 4-2 McKenzie. Farrell was 5-1, but here's the matchup. This is probably the best matchup here. Could decide this region. 6-1 Georgiana will be at 6-0 Elba, and then you've got Pleasant Home at 1-5. They are playing at Houston County, who's 2-5, and then in AISA 0-7 Coosa Valley Christian at 1-6 Abbeville Christian. So that is your matchups for tonight in high school football. Of course, we will recap those big games and talk about it on Monday show next week. The voice of the Dothan Wolves, Jerry Coleman, is scheduled to join us. So anyways, let's jump into it. Here is my conversation with Matt Lowe. As always, he joins me every Friday as we pick and look at these games, and then I will close it up after that. Here you go. All right, everybody. It is Friday. You know what that means. It is time for the Friday Lowdown, and we are joined, as always, by Matt Lowe. Check him out over at Field Level Media. We're going to preview the big games in college football in Week 7. And, Matt, how's it going? How's your week been?
It's good, man. Been busy. About to go do some football stuff with my kids, so excited about that. But been going good, man. About to be a huge weekend of college football, I think. We're going to really start getting to the nitty gritty of who's tough and who's not. But then again, it also goes back to what we've been talking about, how unpredictable things are, like Miami losing to Georgia Tech, and what happened there, I have no idea. But, and so it's a lot of good games this week.
Yeah, I saw that Saturday. I had it on one of my screens, and I was like, take a knee. I mean, the game is over if you take a knee. It did. Hey, props to Georgia. I think everybody's been focusing that, Miami blowing that. Props to Georgia Tech for making the plays to get down there to win the game.
Yeah, for sure, man. And Van Dyke, I think he threw 3 interceptions. So anytime you do that, that's cause for concern.
Yeah, I thought maybe he had turned it back. Last year he had a rough year. He didn't live up to kind of what those preseason expectations that he had. And then this year he played great against Texas A&M when they played earlier in the season. But then, yeah, he had a bad game, 3 turnovers against Miami. So anything else from last week really stand out to you? I've talked about this stuff all week, what happened last week. But anything else stick out to you from last week?
Well, Georgia looked like Georgia, and I talked to you about that. I figured Kirby was going to get on them pretty good, and they look like the team that I think everybody's thought they would be. Didn't know what Eli Drinkwitz was thinking going for it on 4th and 34 in his own territory when he had 3 timeouts. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Alabama looks like they're really hitting stride, and that was a good ball game. But I'm really excited for these games this weekend. I think, Oregon, Washington is probably the top one, but, both those teams scoring about 50 points a game. So it should be an interesting week.
Yeah, it should be. We got some interesting games outside the SEC. We usually maybe pick 1 or 2. We got like 3 of them I picked out that are, outside the SEC other than, Florida State and Troy, of course, as we always pick those games too as well. Let's kick that thing off with Florida State. They will be hosting Syracuse, who's 4-2, but 0-2 in conference. Lost the last 2 games to Clemson, 31-14, and lost to North Carolina, 40-7. They play, like I said, at number 4, Florida State. Florida State's 5-0, 3-0 conference. Florida State's a 17.5-point favorite. Over under is 56. This is 11 a.m. on ABC. Matt, I really liked that Florida State got the run game going last week against Virginia Tech. There were still moments where Florida State, I think, let Virginia Tech stay in the game longer than they should have. Coming out of halftime, they returned a kickoff. It was 22-17. Florida State pulls away. So still yet to see that full quarter football game for them. But they got that run game going in that one. Trey Benson, he had around 200 yards.
Yeah, and like we talked about last week, we thought he'd have a big game. Virginia Tech's run defense wasn't really good. But Johnny Wilson finally got on, got caught a couple
I
touchdowns.
thought about you. I saw him get that score. I said, Matt's going to be happy right now. I just knew it.
Yeah, he's just too good of a player not to be scoring touchdowns. I mean, he's so big. I mean, but Florida State's averaging 42.4 points per game, which is 6th in the country. So I think Syracuse looks like they're kind of spiraling down. So I think FSU wins this game pretty big.
I do too, but I will say this. I was looking at the stats. Syracuse is 5th in the ACC against the run, only allowing 114 yards per game. So we'll see if Florida State can keep that going, stay dedicated to that run game. Now, Jordan Travis didn't have to do much last week. Maybe have to do a little bit more, but I agree with you. Florida State's too good. They're too talented. You're probably looking at a 20-point ball game here. So, but just wanted to throw it out there. We'll see if Syracuse can live up to that with the run. They've been blown out the last 2 games by other ACC foes, one that Florida State's done beat. And we all probably agree that Florida State's better than North Carolina.
We'll see about that. I think they probably got a little bit more talent, but we'll see about that moving forward. I'm interested to see how North Carolina plays this weekend.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in just a little bit. Arkansas at 2-4, 0-3. I think they're staring at 2-5 right in the face. Their 5th straight loss. They play at number 11 Alabama, 11 a.m. kicker. We don't get a lot of Alabama at home SEC 11 a.m. kickoffs, but we're getting to that in this one. This will be on ESPN. Alabama is favored by 20. The over/under 46.5. I'll let you start this one, Matt, but I'll just say this: Arkansas's offensive line is not good. it's horrible.
Yeah, and their secondary isn't very good either. But the thing about Arkansas, they're capable. Like they gave Ole Miss a good game. I mean, gave LSU a good game. Should have beaten BYU. I mean, it's just, but Alabama seems to me, Jalen Miller has looked really comfortable the last couple of weeks. And I thought that took a lot of poise, how they handled that game last weekend in a hostile environment. They came back, I mean, the one thing that I'm noticing though with Bama that don't really seem to have a big play running back, and that kind of they grind it out, but they just don't seem like they got that big time home run hitter at running back. And I'll be interested to see this second part of the season if Saban tries to find, some new guys to play back there that can possibly bust 60, 70 yards. McClellan's a good running back. He's a power back, though. He's not really that home run hitter. So that's one thing I'm looking to see how Alabama adjusts with that. But, their defense is playing well. And I think they're just going to get better on that side of the ball as the season progresses. But, I mean, I think Arkansas is a capable team, and I don't think they're going to win this weekend, but I do think they could give Alabama some problems if their offense is clicking.
Yeah, and you look at Arkansas, again, we talked about this last week. Somehow they're always like in the top 5 in the SEC in sacks. And what is one of Alabama's weaknesses offensively is, look, we'll see how that offensive line does. They struggled in the first half against A&M, 5 sacks on Jalen Milroe. And you're right, the run game was not there last week for Alabama against A&M. But Jalen Milroe, 21 of 33, 321, 3 touchdowns. He had the 1 interception. Jermaine Burton, I mean, he had the fumble late that took some potential points away from Alabama. He played big, and that's something Alabama's needed. They needed one of these receivers to step up. I feel like him and Isaiah Bond really did that last week. I want to see if that continues. So those two guys continue. We're not going to compare them to the receivers they've had in the past. Remember at one time they had 4 that all went to the NFL. Several, what Ohio State's doing now, Alabama was doing that with wide receivers. But we'll see if they got that consistency. If they find that with those two receivers, I think Alabama's offense can kind of take a next step.
Well, I think if you take away Burton off this team, they might have another loss or so, because he's made big plays in key times. I mean, he's got behind the defense some, and he makes tough catches. I mean, he'll catch a ball and he'll take a lick. I mean, he gets right up. So he's been a real big part of their passing game.
Yeah, he has. And look, the defense. Look, I think the defense is going to feast on KJ Jefferson in this game. They cannot, and Arkansas is the 3rd worst run offense in the SEC. And the last 2 weeks, Rocket Sanders is back. I mean, maybe he's still banged up, but they haven't been able to get him going either. It's just, I don't know. I kind of wonder, does some pressure start being put on Sam Pittman?
I don't know about that. I mean, just because of how bad the program was before he got there. But and once again, they should have 2 more wins under their belt, and they were turning into losses, just penalties and mistakes. So I don't think the pressure is going to be put on him yet. I mean, they lost some good players on defense, and I just don't think they've really recovered there.
Yeah. So we both got Alabama on that one. We both got Florida State before. Maybe this next one we'll split. Number 8, we're jumping out of the SEC. We're going out west. Number 8, Oregon, who's 5-0. At number 7, Washington, who's also 5-0. This is 2:30 on ABC. Washington's a 3-point favorite. Feels like that's just them giving the edge to the home team here. The over/under is 67, so they're expecting a lot of points here. And why not? You got Bo Nix versus Michael Penix, and this is a tough one, man. I'm still, as we're doing this right now, I don't really know who I want to go with. Part of me wants to go with Oregon. I really like what Bo Nix has done. It checks out. Oregon has the number 2 defense in the Pac-12. We don't hear a lot about their defense. We all hear about the offense. But what are your thoughts on this game?
Well, both of them play pretty good defense. I think Oregon's only allowing 11 points per game, and that's 5th in the country. And Washington's allowing 18, which is, I think, 20-something in the country. So it might be a little bit lower scoring game than people think. I heard an ESPN guy watching the game the other night say the first one to 50 wins, but I don't know if there'll be that much scoring in this game. And I think a little bit of rain is expected in the forecast. So that could change from tomorrow. But it is a tough one to call. I kind of like Oregon. Just everybody's talking about Washington, and buddy, when I watched them against, I think it was Arizona State. I don't know if that's right or not, but whoever they played. But I like Oregon to go in there and pull the upset.
No, I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to go Washington. I've liked them, and I feel like this is the home team. And Michael Penix, I think this is a big opportunity for him. His name is up there in the Heisman, but I really think for him this is big. I mean, Bo Nix's name's out there. We know what he's about. The other quarterbacks there in the Pac-12. I think this is a showcase opportunity for Michael Penix because it's easy for any quarterback or player or team on the West Coast to kind of get overlooked a little bit. So I'm kind of looking for him to have a big showing in this one. And so I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go Washington, but this is one it's hard to pick. We know this one can go either way. And you're right. I don't think this is going to be a high scoring game as people think because usually when we get teased with that, it doesn't happen. It ends up being like a defensive football game. And honestly, this could be a deal where both coaches try to play it a little bit conservative too. Be like, this is a bigger game. We don't need to make mistakes. Look, Dan Lanning comes from that Kirby Smart, Nick Saban tree. And these kind of games, that's kind of what they do anyways. So, I think, honestly, the 67, I don't even think they hit it. I think both teams stay in the 20s in this one too.
Yeah, and when I watched Washington, it was against Cal. That's when they destroyed Cal. That's who it was. It wasn't Arizona State. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, and especially if weather's in the play. I mean, both these teams like to run the football. I mean, and I think both of them are going to want to establish the run because both teams are pretty good at getting to the quarterback too.
Yeah, that too. So it's going to be a fun one to watch. SEC, back over to it. Texas A&M at 4-2 will be at number 19 Tennessee's 4-1, 2:30 on CBS. Tennessee is a 3.5-point favorite. I think another situation just giving the edge to the home team here. Over under is 55. It kind of feels like Tennessee, since the loss to Florida, it's kind of been hidden to a degree. We haven't really seen much of them. They haven't really been out in front. They haven't been in big games. So this is kind of their chance to get put back into the national spotlight in the national audience. But you know what? I think Texas A&M, I think A&M is going to win this game because I think their front is going to get after Joe Milton. And I think Joe Milton's going to speed up with his throws. He's going to overthrow. He's going to have some interceptions. And A&M wants to run the ball too. And Anaya Smith, I think he's going to go off. I think he will. I think, one, don't punt the ball to the man. That's number one.
Right.
Alabama found out about that. We saw it against Arkansas before. I think he has a big punt return. I think A&M runs the ball. Max Johnson makes enough throws, and I think that defense is going to get a lot of pressure on Milton. So I'm going to pick A&M on this one.
Well, I think I'm going to go opposite of you here. I'm going to be interested to see how Texas A&M responds after that. That's a big loss, losing to Bama. I mean, like that, and I think Tennessee. Their crowd's going to be into it. Tennessee's defense is playing pretty good, allowing about 17 points per game. Brew McCoy being out is a big loss to Tennessee, but Squirrel Wright is Squirrel Wright. Good name right there. Has stepped
Great
up and
name.
really stepped up and started playing well. I think this is a game where Milton will play well. I know sometimes in the past he's been kind of interception prone in big games, but I think Tennessee plays well here, and I think they get A&M in a tight game.
So we said the name Texas, and we said UT. We didn't talk about it in the open, so I got to do it real quickly, before we jump to the next game. OU and Texas. I want to get your thoughts because here was mine. I don't think Texas played their best game last week. I think Quinn Ewers kind of reverted to last year. He made some mistakes, some bad throws, and a fumble, and they had the touchdown on the 1-yard line. Does that make you think Texas isn't back, or do you think that was just a great win by Oklahoma and Texas just made mistakes?
I mean, I think it was a great win by Oklahoma. I mean, that was a heck of a performance, but it goes to show too, man, that when that pressure gets on you about being, that in the college football playoff and all that kind of stuff, I mean, that it can wear on you, and I think Oklahoma kind of ambushed them. I mean, what was that game last year, like 49-0?
Yeah, there was pride involved in that too, and Dylan Gabriel didn't play in the game last year because he got hurt.
Well, what a game he played, I tell you that. I mean, and he was
Clutch.
lights out. He was lights out. I mean, running and throwing. I mean, and Stoops' son played really good in that game, made some big plays. And, it just, that game is always a good game. Like last year, it was just such an anomaly, but it was a terrific game. I watched that pretty much from start to finish.
Yeah, I did too as well. So just had to bring that one up a little bit. So that was let's go back to the games. Troy is playing at Army, 4-2 Trojans. Army 2-3, 2:30 on the CBS Sports Network. Troy is a 4.5-point favorite. The over/under is 43 points, so they're not expecting a lot of points, which it was like a 10-7 game last year when they played. That was a game Carlton Marshall broke the record for tackles all-time FBS. Troy's Kamani Vidal, he had over 200 yards last week against Arkansas State. Matt, he is the leading rusher in FBS with 835 yards. He has 6 touchdowns on the year. But I don't think he's going to get as many yards. Army is going to try to keep the ball. I was talking to somebody that covers Troy down here, Dothan John Johnson, the other day here on the show. And he was talking about Army, the way their offense runs, they're going to keep the ball away as you chew up the clock and stuff. With the new rules in college football, they can take advantage of that even more if they've got that option game going. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, Troy's obviously figured something out on defense. I mean, they've only given up, 10 points the last 2 games. I mean, and you got that running game going with Vidal, and Gunnar Watson's a veteran quarterback there. And the thing with Army here, Army kind of goes the way – they play pretty solid defense, but they kind of go the way Bryson Daly, their quarterback, goes. If he turns the ball over, they usually lose. But if he doesn't do that and he can get his yards in the air and on the ground, they're a pretty tough opponent. I mean, it's up there. You got to travel up there. Weather might come into play. But I like Troy here. I like the way they're playing. I think they're playing good football right now.
Yeah,
I think it'll probably be like 24-17, something like that.
Yeah, it's. I don't see a lot of points, and I don't think Gunnar Watson and Troy's receivers have stepped up. I mean, Matt, every week one of them is catching a one-handed pass. I think the Chris Lewis was doing it for a few weeks, and now every Troy receiver wants to do it. But yeah, they've got it figured out defense. Javon Solomon is second in the Sun Belt in sacks, but this game, he's pretty much not going to have much opportunity. I'm going to kind of see how his game is too. You're mainly a sack guy, so now he's good in other areas on their defense, but now you're going to pick as a team that hardly ever throws the ball. So what's your motivation? What's your intent, and what are you focused on that? So that's going to be. I got Troy too, but it's a fun matchup, especially you're not used to seeing this kind of team either anymore.
No,
because at least used to Georgia Southern brought this, but now they don't do it because Helton now has them throwing the ball all over the place, running a pro style offense. So now you're playing Army. Yeah, you played them last year, but you know how it is. When we see teams that you were not used to playing this style of offense, assignment football is key, and sometimes teams have trouble with that. It's an adjustment when you go up against teams with a triple option.
Yes, it is, and I remember that just from when I played in high school. I mean, it was we team Pelham up here. They would run like the option, and you'd have to get ready for them in a couple of days, and it was. You'd have to turn your back to make sure you wouldn't get cracked back. I mean, it was just a lot of things you had to get ready for. And that's one thing Army always has in its favor on when teams don't have a lot of time to prepare for them.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're open with them. And you remember when Navy was doing really well, but it seemed like Navy didn't always do great that first game of the year or in their bowl game. But the rest of the year, they were pretty solid. But back into the SEC, we'll jump into it with Florida 4-2 at 2-3 South Carolina, 2:30 on the SEC Network. South Carolina is a 2-point favorite. We're seeing a lot of where the home teams are barely favored in these games. So there's a lot of games this weekend the odds makers think are toss-ups because if they're that close, they're just favoring home team. The over-under is 51.5. I think this is a big game for South Carolina and Beamer. They can't really go 2-4. They need to get this win because then you start looking and say, okay, where's 6 wins at? Where are they going to get bowl eligible? Florida, they're not as good away from Gainesville. Like when they're on the road, they're not as good. We've seen that now. When they're at home, the offense is humming. I'm going to go with South Carolina. I think South Carolina is going to bring it. South Carolina can't run the ball, so they're going to see all the Spencer Rattler show and the number 4 ranked pass offense in the SEC. But I think South Carolina gets this one.
Well, I'm gonna go with Florida here. I just, although South Carolina is coming off a bye week, which that's always a big deal, because you guys got fresh legs. But I like that Florida ground attack. I mean, Montreal Johnson had a big game last week. Florida's still playing pretty good defensively, and South Carolina, they're just so unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get out of them on a week-to-week basis. I mean, they got killed by North Carolina. Tennessee killed them. So I'm gonna roll with the Gators here to go in there and steal a win. And Florida's still in the SEC East race. I mean, they're not going to win it, but they're still in the race. I mean, because they play Georgia next week, right?
It's coming up. Let's see, they always have a
Next
week
week
off
too.
before that game. So let's see. Next week would be the 22nd. So we're probably at the 21st. So we're looking probably at the 28th, I'm thinking.
Yeah. It's coming up here soon.
Yeah, so I like how you did that. You gave them hope, and then you pulled the rug out from under them. It says they're still in the race, but they're not going to win it.
No.
I gotta say this. You know how you got on to me, or didn't get on to me, but you mentioned my guy Jackson Dart last week. I gotta admit something. I think Graham Mertz has not played horrible. That's another quarterback I was not high on because this is what I saw at Wisconsin. I don't really think he's had a game where you can say he cost Florida the game. He's played well. He's top 5 in the SEC. I just wanted to say that if we have any Florida fans listening, that I see Graham Mertz. I see he's playing well.
Yeah, he is. I mean, and when they need him to play well, but I don't. South Carolina's burned me a couple of times this year, so I'm gonna go with the Gators.
All right, so now we're going to jump into Auburn at 3-2, 0-2 in the conference, at the best offense in the SEC, but probably the worst defense, at number 22, LSU, 4-2, 3-1 in conference, 6 o'clock on ESPN. So it's at night in Baton Rouge. Everybody knows what going down there. LSU's an 11-point favorite. Over/under is 61. This is what's funny about this, Matt. It's weakness versus weakness. It's the Auburn offense versus the LSU defense. Which one will step up? I'm going to let you lead this one off.
Well, I think you're going to see a little bit more Kedrick Falk on the defensive line for Auburn with Masai Nasili Kite out for the year. I think Falk, I mean, he was a 5-star recruit, the 6'5", 280 pounds. I think he can give them a dynamic there as a pass rusher that they don't really have on the line. And I think the kid needs to play a little bit more personally, but because if you can't get the pass rush to Jaden Daniels, they're going to burn you alive in the passing game. So, I mean, Auburn in this game, it's going to be interesting to see how Hugh Freeze, if he calls plays again, which I'm assuming he will. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for him. I think Auburn's got to run the ball, but I also think that they got to pass the ball a little bit more too. I mean, and some guys need to step up for them at receiver. I think Rivaldo Fairweather, that guy kind of like Brock Bowers, he needs to get the ball like at least 10 times a game. He's just too big and dynamic of a player not to. But when they're throwing these back shoulder throws, guys got to start catching the ball, in big games. So something's telling me this is going to be a good game. I'm not going to say Auburn's going to go in there and win, but I think Auburn's going to give them a pretty good game just because LSU's defense is terrible. And Missouri ran on them pretty good last week. So I think it's going to be a good game, but I think LSU's going to pull it out.
Yeah, I'm going with LSU too. And I think it's going to be key for Auburn, like you said, run the ball, time of possession. One early on, get a score up, a touchdown preferably. Get that LSU crowd out of it. Do not – if you win the coin toss, Auburn, I take the ball because you need to go down there and score. Because if LSU gets the ball first and they march the ball down the field with Jaden Daniels and, I mean, with what they got with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas at receiver, I mean, those are 2 NFL guys. I mean, and the emergence of Thomas at receiver has even made this offense even more dangerous. That's the key for Auburn. I think I agree with you. I think it's closer than what they think it's going to be. But yeah, I got LSU and Jaden Daniels. If he keeps playing the way he's playing, man, I don't care how many losses LSU ends up with at the end of the year. He needs to be up for Heisman, top 5, top 3, whatever. I mean, the numbers he's putting up, it's incredible what he's doing. The improvement he's made from last year to this year, tremendous.
He looks like a step faster, too, to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. He just looks like he's faster than he was. But Auburn's linebackers are going to really have to play well in this game. And I think Auburn's got the defensive backs to kind of match up with him. But they're going to have to stop him from the runs. If they can limit him on the ground to maybe under 20 yards, that would be a big win.
Yeah, it would. It would. And next up, we're going to go back outside the SEC for the next 2 games. Number 10, USC, another team that can't play defense. At 6-0 is playing at 21, Notre Dame 5-2. Man, Notre Dame's probably tired of these big games. It's been week after week. This has been a grind for Notre Dame. 6:30 over on NBC. Notre Dame is a 3-point favorite. The over/under is 60.5. This is probably the best defense USC has played all year. Notre Dame is going to play defense. I mean, they play well defensively in all these games, even the losses. And then I'm kind of wondering if Sam Hartman going to have a big game here. But going up against Caleb Williams, keeping the pressure on USC to have to score every time, which pretty much feels like that's the case. Who do you like in this one?
I like Notre Dame. Just because, I mean, it's a night game in South Bend. Sam Hartman's been playing well. And look, USC, I think they lead the country in scoring, but their defense is terrible. I mean, kind of like, I don't know. In Arizona, I almost got him last week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, Notre Dame can play some defense a little bit. So I like the Irish to pull. I like who's favored? Notre Dame's favored by 2.5. Yeah. I like Notre Dame probably like a touchdown. I think they're going to hold them down a little bit.
You know, if this was any other year with Notre Dame, I would probably pick USC, but because they have Sam Hartman, they've got a dude at quarterback. So if this does get into a back and forth game, they have the capability with the quarterback they have now in the Notre Dame defense. I like Notre Dame too. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a close game. And I'll be watching Auburn-LSU, of course, covering it for Last Word on College Football. But I'll be keeping my eyes on this one too. Now, we mentioned this team earlier. Number 25, Miami at 4-1. 0-1 in ACC play with that Georgia Tech loss. They will be at number 12, North Carolina. 5-0, 2-0 in ACC play. 6:30 on ABC. North Carolina is a 3.5-point favorite here. The over/under is 58. You know, this is one of these games, too. Everybody's dogging Miami this week because of what Cristobal didn't take the knee. And then you look at North Carolina, outside of the App State close game, they've been pretty solid all year. Drake May, they got the receiver back. The NCAA finally gave him, the waiver. He's going to be playing and all that stuff. I think North Carolina wins this one by a couple touchdowns. But I do want to see, was last week just a blip, or is that who Miami is, and they've kind of reverted back to last year's team?
I agree. I mean, like we talked about earlier, your quarterback can't throw 3 interceptions. I mean, that goes for any team. I mean, you can't have that many mistakes and expect to win games. I mean, and Drake May, man, that kid can ball.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Tar Heels under Gene Chiswick, they're playing good defense too. I mean, and he's always good at scheming up teams. So I'm with you. I like North Carolina there. I like something like 34-17, something like that.
Yeah, because you can't turn them. It's one thing to turn the ball over to Georgia Tech. No disrespect to Georgia Tech, but they don't have the quarterback on the other side that's Drake May. You start giving Drake May extra possessions, he's going to burn you. And the thing is with him, he's a great passer. But if he has to, he puts the ball down and runs with it. He's just as dangerous running as he is throwing it.
Yeah, and he's really good outside of the pocket too. I mean, when he's out of the pocket and looking downfield, I mean, he makes some tremendous throws.
And in the final game, we're going to look at Missouri at 5-1, 1-1. They will be at number 24, Kentucky. I don't know if Kentucky should still be ranked after last week, but that is what it is. Kentucky's 5-1, 6:30 on the SEC network. Kentucky's 2.5-point favorite, 51.5 the over/under. I don't know, and Mark Stoops is in the news accusing Georgia of buying players with the NIL. He basically on his coach's show this week talked about Hey, if you want us to be as good as Georgia, you might want to donate some more money. Kirby was asked about it. He said, much ado about nothing. He thinks Mark is just trying to get more NIL money. But this matchup, I'm not going with Kentucky. I know they're favored. They're the home team. They're the ranked team. I'm going with Missouri. Brady Cook's playing great ball. Luther Burden. And I don't trust Devin Leary. He hasn't showed me anything. He's missing passes. Kentucky shot themselves in the foot repeatedly against Georgia. Early on, they moved the ball on Georgia in that game, but they couldn't consistently do it. So I like what Drinkwitz is doing with Missouri this year, other than, we talked about earlier, that fourth down attempt they had instead of kicking it with 3 timeouts. But I'm going to go with the Missouri Tigers in this one.
I tend to agree. I'm gonna agree with you there. That's who I like too. But what in the world was he thinking there? I mean, I don't know. And that the way that game ended was just so bizarre. I mean, because Missouri was, toe for toe, going punch for punch with them, and then all of a sudden it just falls apart. But I don't know why in the world you would not kick the ball with 3 timeouts with a 4th and 34 in a 1-score game. I mean, yeah, you might not get it back, but if you go for it and don't get it, I mean, you're setting them up right for the driver's seat for another score.
Mm-hmm.
So I just – and Phillip, I heard Greg McElroy and Cole Kubik talking about this. What are some of these coaches thinking now? I mean, like I said, we talked about this before. You drive down the field 80 yards, 70 yards. It's 4th and 2, and you go for it, and you don't get any points. And you lose by 3 points. It's just I just don't understand. It's going on in the NFL too. I mean, these guys are making too much money to be making some of these decisions, in my opinion. And it's always the analytics tell you to do this or do that. What about common sense? Do they need to hire a common sense coach? Hey, you can hire me for about $150,000 a year. I'll come be your common sense coach. I mean, because I don't understand. But getting back to the game, Brady Cook is playing really well. Like you said with Burden. I mean, they got some dudes at receiver. This will probably be a high-scoring game, I would think. But I like Mizzou, and it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from that loss last week, because they were doing so well in the game, and then it just blew up on them in the end. So it'll be a lot of gut check time for the Missouri Tigers and Kentucky for that matter. But
yeah,
hey, and also on the NIL stuff with him saying that, it's true. I mean,
yeah.
Heck, they're the top program in the country right now. If everybody wants to go there, they got more money. I mean, like what he said is he's not lying.
It's 1% true. It's kind of like you hear any coach complain about that, like what Lane Kiffin says. I don't use the word complain when they talk about it. Other teams, they're also using it as a way to send a message to their boosters, their donors, their fan base. If we get the kind of money they have, we can go get the players that they have. It's also that. I don't really take what Mark Stoops said as a shot at Georgia. He knows he's on a platform at the time. He's talking to his fan base. He said it. I mean, if he was really that upset about it, he would have said it Saturday after the game in the press conference. But no, he didn't. He chose this moment to say it. Saying, it is what it is. Brady Cook, too. The last thing I'll say on this, his interception streak got ended. Had 2 interceptions against LSU last week. We'll see if he can restart that thing up. So So we got some differences in here. We got some ones we picked the same. So be interesting. I'll have to start keeping back up with that again on how we're doing each week. But Matt, we kind of crossed over what we usually do, about 35, 36 minutes. Tell us about Field Level Media and what you got going on over there.
Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons Washington Commander preview should be up here tonight, or it'll be up there soon. So check that out. Check out all their previews: college football, Major League Baseball, NBA, hockey, golf. They do it all, man. fieldlevelmedia.com.
All right, sounds good. That's going to wrap up our Week 7 preview. Appreciate everybody checking it out. And Matt, I will talk to you next week.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it.
I have to unmute the microphone, Phillip. That is my conversation, as weekly conversation with Matt Lowe, talking all things college football in week 7. Real quick, before we get out of here, we're not going to dive much into this because we're at 40 minutes now on the podcast. Atlanta got beat last night. Once again, they are out. The Philadelphia Phillies beat them 3-1. You know, when you look at the Atlanta offense during the season, what they did, they scored just 8 runs in 4 games. You do not expect that out of this team. So, and I've got the question up over on the Phillip Jordan Sports Facebook page. What moves, if any, should Atlanta make after losing this series? Again, to the Phillies, team knocked them out. Same thing last year. So go over there. Put in your thoughts, what you think, what the Braves should do. And then finally, you know, we don't really talk about NFL on here. That's partially been me. We may start kind of just looking at some of the teams in the Southeast, the ones I know people in the Wiregrass care about. So on Sunday, get up bright and early on Sunday morning, NFL Network. Baltimore will be at the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee needs a big win there. Baltimore's playing solid. At 12 o'clock on CBS, you'll have the Washington Commanders at the Atlanta Falcons. Then later in the day, or not later in the day, at that same time, on CBS at 12 o'clock, you'll have Carolina at Miami. Bryce Young versus Tua, 2 former Alabama quarterbacks there. Also 12 o'clock, you'll have the Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars. New Orleans is at Houston. You also will have Detroit at Tampa Bay. That'll be the 3:25 game on Fox. So that's the teams down here in the South, the Southeast teams. The 2 games that we'll get locally, if you're not one that has NFL Sunday ticket, you will be getting at 12 on CBS, the Commanders Falcons game, and then on Fox, the Texans New Orleans game. Well, anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of Wiregrass Day in the Sports. Like I said, we'll be back on Monday, recapping the weekend, looking what happened in high school football, college football, all that good stuff. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Follow me on social media at P Jordan SEC. Or check out a podcast. Leave 4 stars. You're just a straight up hater. Please leave a review on our podcast, and I will read them on future edition. Go over to wiregrassdailynews.com. And also, email me, sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Talk to you on Monday.
Thank you for tuning in to today's Wiregrass Daily News Sports. Make sure to tune back in on Monday for more of the sports you love in the Wiregrass. Check out the podcast at wiregrassdailynews.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Continue the conversation and connect with Phillip on social media at P Jordan SEC.